On line 4. Hello, sir.
Pete, how are you doing this afternoon?
Not bad at all. MHA for Mount Pearl Southlands. Independent MHA. Yeah.
You got it. Pete, I just wanted to continue on, I guess, with the conversation we had last week about democratic reform and electoral reform. And, of course, last week we were talking about trying to remove some of the money from politics, whether that be big corporate dollars or big union dollars. But today I want to bring forward another aspect of reform that I would certainly be advocating for. And that has to do with the province's fiscal position prior to elections. And, of course, as we know, there was significant controversy, I guess we'll say, prior to the last provincial general election, whereby now Premier Ball had written former Premier Davis asking for the financial picture, and Premier Davis did not provide it. And, of course, there was a whole bunch of promises made. And after the Premier Ball and government were elected, they said, well, we didn't realize we were in as bad a shape as we really are in, and therefore we have to reverse all the stuff that we campaigned on and so on.
Yeah, I don't know how many people are buying any of that, because it's not that difficult to have a general idea of where we are, and a lot of people did. Presumably the opposition party in the province would have every much as good an idea, and, with the expertise they have, access to a better idea.
Well, I agree. I agree that that's really, a pretty hollow argument, to say the least. But what I'm suggesting is that for the benefit of the public, never mind the insiders within the party and the researchers and people who ought to be in the know, I'm talking about full disclosure to the public. So what I'm suggesting, and this has been suggested to me by a number of citizens, including a gentleman I spoke to this afternoon, actually, and I think it's a great idea. I think that we should have legislation in place that would dictate that prior to a general election, there would be a requirement by the government, and of course we can certainly debate and work out the details, whether it be 30 days before writ drop or 60 days or 90 days or whatever, a reasonable period of time would be determined. But prior to the general election, there would be a requirement legally for the government, and perhaps the Auditor General would have to be involved and to verify the data and so on. But for there to be a public release of the financial position of the province, a complete picture. And that way, when parties or individuals are campaigning in the subsequent provincial election, then the public has a full picture of what our finances, or what's contained within our finances, and then they can certainly be in a better position to question parties and individual candidates when they're coming forward with campaign promises, to be able to say, well, if you're promising this, how do you propose, based on this fiscal circumstance, what is it that you're going to cut in order to create this? Or how are you going to generate money to create this? Or if you're going to do this differently, how is that going to fit in within the, financial picture that we currently have? So again, it's just, creating upfront, providing the information, making it open and transparent, and then eliminating the excuse that we've heard so many times, not just by this government, but we've heard it in the past as well, where we didn't know, we didn't realize it was as bad as it was. Well, yes, you did realize, because it was put out there publicly, and you made your campaign promises based on the information that was publicly released, so you're going to have to justify them.
Well, I'd say the vast majority of people would say right away, absolutely, that is not only a logical thing to expect, but, an ethical one. But what would you say if I countered with, as objective as numbers are supposed to be, there are still ways to fiddle with the picture. It can be presented in a subjective way. And listen, there might even be an argument, someone could forward saying, if we actually gave the bare truth about where we are, you never know. It could be negative for the province. We might not have the same borrowing capacity. I don't know. I'm just thinking that there are probably a few reasons why someone could come up with reasons as to why that wouldn't always be in our best interest.
Well, people can always come up reasons for and against everything, I guess. In terms of painting a subjective picture, that's why I'm suggesting that somebody externally, say the Auditor General, as an example, would be the person that would oversee or would present, not government. I'm not suggesting that the government come out and paint a picture whatever way they want to paint it. I'm suggesting that someone such as the Auditor General, doesn't have to be the Auditor General, but that would seem like a logical way to go, that someone like the Auditor General, who is independent, would present an objective view of what the province's finances are, not allowing politicians to tinker with the wording and tinker with the statistics and show the numbers whatever way they want to show them for their own benefit. And so I just think it's another thing that, I'm throwing out ideas and suggestions of things that we can do as a province to reform our democratic processes, to reform our electoral processes, to be more open and transparent, and to give people the full, honest picture, and to try to remove the politics away from these important matters, because we've seen politics rule for far too long, and it's time to get down to reality and start telling people the truth of how things really are.
And then, of course, once you have numbers that have been verified by, either an independent or a source like the Auditor General, then you have people putting campaigns together to say how you should interpret those numbers. Keep in mind this, or, this is the context within which this has to be, evaluated.
Well, you know what? Campaigning and politics, Pete, we're always going to see that to some degree. We know that. But I think though that if we start off on a clear, with a clear understanding publicly of where we are to, I think that it puts the public in a much better position to be able to ask the hard questions and to see through any of the political BS that may be put forward. It certainly can't hurt. We're not doing it now. We've seen where that's gotten us, and anything that we can do to improve that situation, I think, is a positive for the province.
All right, sir. Appreciate the call, and we'll see what kind of response we get to your suggestion. I don't know if it's done elsewhere, but it sounds good to me.
Yeah, and I'm not sure either, Pete, to be honest with you. But although I do believe there are, I could be wrong, but I believe there are provinces, or I think maybe even federally, where even throughout the year that, because this is another thing which I'll talk about at another time, but I think there may be mechanisms, sort of independent mechanisms, even throughout the year that would give status, if you will, as to, if we're on budget and if we're on target and stuff like that, that there are mechanisms in place even throughout every year, not just leading up to elections. So that's another thing we could be looking at. But, I think we've got to start throwing out ideas and starting to look at ways of doing things differently and to try to remove some of the politics if we can, and to try to paint a clearer picture for the public so that, people, as I said, that they know what the situation is. They know up front what they're voting for. They can question candidates. They can question parties. They can hold people to account, and they can take away this, miserable excuse that we've seen so many times of, we didn't know.
I love a good round of what if. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. See you, Pete. Have a good day. Bye.
Paul Lane.